Statement of explanations are also called written explanations or statements of intentions or even SOE. Basically, it's an explanation of what you are writing. So we're going to look today at why we write a statement of explanation, how to go about doing it, and when you would write one. So let's start with why. Basically, this task that you're completing, the SAC, is a response to a text. So the statement of explanation is where you show and explain a lot of this explicit thinking about the text, which might not come through just in the creative piece that you've created. It's also in the criterion. It's a pretty significant part of that criteria. It's worth 1/4 of your mark. So you'll notice here, this bottom line, it says, it gives us the details about the statement of explanation. I know it's really blurry to see, but we'll do our best. Basically, in the statement of explanation, you need to justify the decisions you made during the creative process. So that's the form you've chosen to write in and the language you've chosen to use, the decisions you made as the author. You also need to explain the connections between your piece and the original text that you're referring to. And then you also need to explicitly explain the purpose, audience, and context of your piece. And so this breakdown of the criteria forms what we look at in your statement of explanation. There's a handy little acronym that you can use called FLAPC. So F stands for form. For example, you might write a narrative. You want to explain why you've chosen to write a narrative, and then you want to go deeper and explain the different steps or choices you made because it is a narrative. So how did you orientate the audience? What was your rising action? What did you choose to do for that? Why did you choose the particular climax that you had? What was the falling action and the resolution, and why did you decide to make that the resolution? You want to be as specific as possible. Language, L, is where you're talking about the language choices you made. So for your imagery, for example, you might have used a lot of similes, metaphors, personifications, those sorts of things. You might have also used a lot of sensory imagery, so a lot of smells and sounds in your descriptions. And you also want to talk about here things like characterization. How did you go about characterizing them? Was it the dialogue they used? What was unique about their dialogue? You want to go into detail here. What point of view did you write from? Is it first person, third person, omniscient? Who was your narrator and why did you make them your narrator? Have you included any quotes from the original text? There's a good place to put them in now and reference them. And why did you use those quotes? The A stands for audience. This one can be as simple as people who were familiar with the original text, but it's better to be a bit more specific than that. So people familiar with the original text, specifically women who didn't see much of themselves in the story, or specifically rural readers who would be able to empathize with the hardships of the landscape, or something like that. Specifically who? P stands for purpose. What themes are you going to be covering in your story, and what messages and ideas are you wanting your audience to leave with? There has to be a purpose to this piece, and you want that purpose to be connected to the original text. So if you're looking at MacLeod, you might be looking at the conflict between modernization and tradition. That might be one of the themes, and what are you saying about that theme? And then the last one is context, and this is where you might want to include, this is where you should include things like the setting, the date that you're going to be setting it in. The context information can actually happen right at the start. It's a good place to put that in your introduction in your statement of explanation, but yeah, you can mix this up and put them any way you want, really, as long as it's in your statement of explanation. Each school sets their own parameters on when you actually physically write the statement of explanation. If the school says that you're going to be writing it after you've written the creative response, then the statement of explanation is going to be an explanation of what you actually did write. Whereas if the school says you write your statement of explanation beforehand, then it's going to be about what you intend to write, and that might change as you get into writing the thing. You might make some different choices. At our school, at my school, we set it as something you write after the creative response so that you can reflect on the choices that you made afterwards. You should also be doing a practice statement of explanation during your initial planning and drafting stage. So when you're practicing your creative writing skills, you should also be practicing writing a statement of explanation. And when you're actually planning your piece, a lot of these things that you're thinking about, like language and characterization, can help you consolidate your thinking about what you're going to write. It can be a really good tool to help you plan. So do it at the start as well, and then keep revising it as you do more drafting and planning. Here's a basic outline of what it could look like. So your introduction, your first paragraph should be introductory. Oh, sorry about the typo. And you should orientate your reader. So which story did you use for your creative response? It should be a very brief summary of how you used the story as the basis of your own, like what setting, character, key event did you use from the original story. And you could outline why you chose the particular title that you write for your story. The body paragraphs, again, flap C. It doesn't matter what order you put them in. You could include the C part, the context, as part of your introductory statement. It's up to you where you put them in. You just want to use it as sort of a checklist. Have I covered FLAPC? And then the conclusion is where you talk about the insights you've gained into McLeod's, or whatever author you're talking about, their writing style by undertaking this task. What did you learn about them and how they went about writing it? You want to discuss the decisions you made during the process, so any major rejections you made, any additions you added, or any tweaking to the original story. And if you feel like it, you do not have to, but if you want to, you could talk about which areas you felt most successful. Look at the class notes that you've been given for a sample of what this will look like. You also want to aim for about 300 words or about a page of handwriting for your statement of explanation. Good luck.